The moment I saw the presentation screen light up with a slide deck I had built from scratch, something inside me turned cold. There it was, my work, my model, my structure, but it didn't have my name. My annotations were gone. The footnotes I had carefully typed in for clarity, even the custom color formatting I always used to group data trends, all stripped away like I'd never been part of it. And standing there in front of the boardroom, sleeves rolled up and voice smooth like he'd practiced it 100 times in the mirror, was Ethan Draxler. This predictive model was built by my team over the past few weeks, he said with complete confidence, like he believed it. Like he had any right to speak those words. As if I hadn't just spent the last 6 months drowning in raw data, rebuilding corrupted pipelines, and restructuring legacy infrastructure that should have been retired 5 years ago. The sheer audacity of it almost made me laugh. Almost. Instead, I just sat there, hands folded neatly, pen hovering above my notepad like I was paying attention. My pulse thudded against my eardrums. I didn't blink. I didn't frown. I just listened as he took credit for everything. I remember dragging myself home at 3 a.m., exhausted and numb, after finalizing the logic's pitch output. I remembered skipping meals, ignoring calls, even canceling a vacation with my sister because I knew if I left, the entire project would fall apart. I had poured every ounce of my expertise, energy, and mental bandwidth into making that model bulletproof. And Ethan? Ethan wasn't even employed at our beach when I presented the initial structure in that closed-door session 2 months ago. But now, here we were. And no one said a word. When the lights came back on, the room shifted into that polite post-presentation hum. Nods, murmured praise, the shuffle of leather chairs and designer shoes on carpet. Ethan walked back to his seat like a man who had just carved a statue out of marble. People smiled at him the way they do when they smell fresh power. It made me sick. I kept my expression neutral and still. There's a difference between being stunned and being strategic. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing my anger. Power doesn't panic, it plans. As the meeting wrapped and people began to trickle out, Ethan strolled past my chair. He paused just long enough to lean down slightly, flashing that irritatingly smug grin of his. "Nice work today," he said like we were some sort of creative duo. "Maybe next time, we tag-team the delivery." I turned to him slowly, my voice steady. "Sure." I even smiled just a little, but inside, something shifted. A fire had been lit. Quiet, but furious. Later that day, Lucy Hall from HR sent me a meeting invite with no context. I walked in and immediately felt it, the tension, the discomfort. Lucy didn't meet my eyes. Her tone was flat, rehearsed. She handed me a printed letter, one that already had my name at the top and a signature line at the bottom. "Due to organizational restructuring," she said like she was reading from a manual, "your compensation package has been revised. Effective immediately, a 20% reduction in salary will be reflected in your next pay cycle." I stared at her. "Is this a joke?" Lucy hesitated, then muttered, "I'm just the messenger." She quickly gathered her tablet and left the room, clearly eager to avoid being caught in the fallout. I sat alone in that glass box of a meeting room for a full minute. I didn't cry. I didn't slam the table. I just stared at the paper. My name, their numbers. A message without any message at all. "We don't need you to leave. We just need you to know your place." I folded the letter slowly, slipped it into my bag, and walked out. But I didn't go home. I went straight to Brian. Brian, the senior IT engineer, was one of the few decent people left at our beach. No politics, no ego, just an incredible mind for systems and a quiet loyalty that ran deeper than most realized. We'd worked together on integrating the modeling platform with the internal API suite. He knew exactly how much of that work was mine. I found him in the server room. "I need a favor," I said quietly. He raised an eyebrow. "What kind? Can you double-check the audit trail triggers?" I asked. "The ones I embedded when I first built the prototype." He nodded slowly, like he already knew. "I've been monitoring them. Everything's still there. Time-stamped. Immutable." My shoulders relaxed just slightly. "Keep them safe. And if anything gets wiped, backups, logs, even emails, I want to know." Brian nodded again. Already done. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, reliving every smirk, every stolen word, every quiet betrayal. I made a decision, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. Ethan Draxler had no idea who he'd just tried to erase. 2 mornings later, I logged into the system and immediately noticed something was off. My dashboard was missing tabs, critical ones. My admin panel access was gone. The data sandbox I had designed for stress testing the model? Locked. My permissions had been downgraded, and no one had told me. I dove into the system access logs, and there it was. At exactly 12:01 a.m., my user profile had been edited. Admin rights removed. Reason: security reassignment. And listed as the new owner of the modeling platform? Lucy Hall. Lucy, the HR rep who needed help building simple spreadsheets, now had control over a dynamic forecasting tool built on 6 months of advanced statistical modeling. I took a screenshot, encrypted it, and saved it to my archive. Then I started digging. I searched through every shared file, every forwarded chain I'd ever been CC'd on. It took hours, but eventually, I found it, buried inside an email Lucy had received from Ethan weeks earlier. Subject line: clarification request. In her reply, she had attached a zip file. I opened the file from the system's backup server and froze. It was my model, my actual build, exported straight from my development folder. The metadata was intact. Author me. Last modified me. The change history clearly showed every step of the build, including the base code, the dynamic rule sets, and even the rejected test versions. All of it. I saved a copy with full logs, encrypted and time-stamped. Then I looked at the name listed under last downloaded by Lucy Hall. Ethan hadn't even bothered to scrub the evidence. They thought I would just disappear quietly. But what they failed to realize is that I never stop at silence. I document. I verify. And when the time comes, I strike. And just like that, Ethan had everything. He stripped the name, changed the title page, uploaded the file again under a different folder, his folder. The file that once lived quietly in my secured, time-stamped archive was now rebranded, sanitized, and launched like it had materialized from thin air. Or, as he liked to say, from his team. The company moved fast. Suddenly, that model, my model, was everywhere. It was being called Ethan's framework in slide decks, cited in emails, and used in executive summaries. There was even talk of a press release. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone out. I didn't barge into Martin's office or storm into a meeting. No, I just reached for my red notebook. That notebook only came out when things were serious. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote at the top, distortion timeline. Every version number, every login, every edit, every deleted note or updated title. I documented the shift in language between builds, how the headers were tweaked, how certain phrases I had used in early drafts had disappeared entirely. It wasn't just about proving the theft, it was about building the signature, the pattern, the method he used. By page 3, something clicked. This wasn't just about me. I designed the model to be stable, adaptable, and deeply secure, but also cautious. It had anomaly detection layers baked into the backend that could sense trend deviations or API failures early. I had built those checks for a reason. Ethan had removed or bypassed them, probably didn't understand their function, or worse, saw them as unnecessary bloat and yanked them out. That made the model unstable. Not immediately, subtly. Dangerously. So I made a call. Jared, it's Celia, I said, voice casual. He picked up immediately. Hey, we just started running that model from your team. Looks slick. Have you looked at the outlier reports yet? I asked. Nothing's popped yet. Why? Just keep an eye on the trend gaps around week 6, I said. The baseline tolerance might be different from expected. Silence. Did someone touch the thresholds? He asked. I paused. I'm not sure, I replied, even though I was. But it's probably worth watching. We exchanged a few more words before hanging up. Jared was smart, experienced. I didn't need to explain everything. He would run checks. Quietly. Thoroughly. Back at my desk, I went back to my notebook. This wasn't a grudge anymore. This was protection. Ethan wasn't just stealing credit. He was setting the entire partner forecast system on unstable ground. Lucy, unknowingly, had passed along a version of the model that no longer had my safety nets. But that was fine. I didn't need to argue with anyone. I didn't need a showdown. All I had to do was follow the system I designed. Eventually, it would speak for itself. From that point on, I changed my behavior. Slightly. Intentionally. I started showing up to work 15 minutes later than usual. I stopped responding to emails instantly. When someone made a mistake during meetings, I didn't jump in to help. I let it hang. I let gaps widen. I let my silence grow. In one team meeting, when someone asked about a query I had written myself, I tilted my head and said, "I'm not sure. You might want to check with Ethan." It worked better than I expected. Ethan started smiling more. His posture around me relaxed. He stopped checking in. He stopped CCing me on updates. I was fading from his radar. Exactly where I wanted to be. Then I tested something bigger. I submitted a formal access request through our internal system. The request? Reopen the metadata log on the model's deployment. It was a basic request, something I normally had clearance for. But this time it was denied. Not by policy. Not by automation. It was denied by Ethan Draxler himself. The system log read, "Rejected by Ethan Draxler." Perfect. I waited a day, then posted a short message in our internal #modeling Slack channel, noticing some baseline shifts in partner dashboards for late-week trend reports. Anyone else seeing this? It was subtle, neutral, but it did the job. Nora from procurement DM'd me 10 minutes later. "Did you get locked out of your config sheets?" she asked. I replied with a shrug emoji. "I'm just the data ghost now." She didn't respond immediately, but I saw something change later that afternoon. Under the module I built for vendor feedback loops, a new system tag appeared, nprocure/monitored. Nora was watching now. Quietly. That was all I needed. The next day, Brian found me in the hallway. "I've been tracking deployment activity," he said softly, eyes on Ethan's closed door. "He's pushing shadow updates without approvals." "Manual pushes?" I asked. "Yeah." "No change control logs. And the external API calls?" "He's throttling them. Something's not syncing right." "Archive it." "Already started. Full log sets, compressed and backed up." I nodded. "Thank you." Brian was loyal to clean data, to honest systems, never to egos. By Friday, Adrian from finance walked by my desk with a coffee in hand. "Hey," he said. "Just wanted to say, the logic on that subscription forecast model? That was genius." I blinked. "Thanks. Yeah, Ethan presented it this morning like it was his. But I remembered your walkthrough from January. It's identical. Same dummy dataset. Same structure. Even the same typos in the column headers." My lips twitched. He hadn't even cleaned up the test labels before recycling the content. Sloppy. I didn't react. I just nodded and added a new page to my red notebook. Attribution trail. Every reused phrase. Every mirrored dataset. Every piece of proof that Ethan was presenting was my work, without even the courtesy of edits. This wasn't about getting credit anymore. This was about setting the stage. The more I listened, the more I watched, the clearer it became. Ethan wasn't strategic. He was arrogant. Arrogant enough to believe no one was paying attention. That everyone he was stealing from would stay quiet. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was methodical. And soon, Ethan was going to learn the difference. But some of us were. And we were done staying silent. The first rail crack appeared on a partner call, one that included our CEO, Martin Graves, and the entire Loginex team. Jared was there too, cool as ever, but I could tell the difference. He was prepared. Over-prepared. That kind of preparation didn't come from curiosity. It came from suspicion. "We've started seeing spikes that the model's not catching," Jared said, not bothering with the usual corporate niceties. "We assumed the anomaly detection features were still running. They're not." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was loaded. Everyone knew what he had just implied. Martin didn't flinch, but I watched his eyes narrow as he leaned slightly forward. Jared wasn't finished. I ran a diff against the version Ethan uploaded. The detection logic's been stripped out. Also, the metadata still shows the original creator. One name keeps coming up: Celia Rowe. My camera stayed off. My hands were still. But inside, I exhaled slowly. Ethan, caught off guard, stumbled over his response. There must have been a syncing error. The logic might have carried over from a prior draft that Celia helped test. Clever, dismissive, and completely useless. Martin didn't respond right away. He just leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching Ethan with the kind of stare that says, "I don't believe you, but I'm going to let you hang yourself quietly." By the end of that call, Jared had already sent the logs to IT. He sent a copy to Martin too. Just like that, the house Ethan had built on top of my work had a crack running straight through its foundation, and Martin now had his hands on the blueprint. I didn't need to rush anything. That was all I needed. The days that followed were quiet in a very specific kind of way. Not peaceful, not idle. Quiet like a stage before reveal. Ethan didn't know it yet, but the system he claimed to control had begun to reject him. First came the calendar glitches. His meeting invites started failing, either going out twice or vanishing from attendees' schedules. Conference rooms were double booked. Guests arrived for 2 different meetings at once. Nothing major. Just annoying. Just frequent. Then came the dashboard issues. Tiles refused to load under Ethan's credentials. Widgets timed out. Filters wouldn't apply. And those issues? They didn't affect everyone. Only him. The next morning, Lucy came by my office, tablet clutched in her arms like a shield. "Hey, do you know why the metrics dashboard keeps showing locked for updates? Ethan says he can't access his views." I looked up slowly. That's strange. Has Brian checked the role configurations? I sent a request yesterday, but he hasn't responded yet. I'm sure he will, I said and turned back to my screen. She lingered, waiting for the old version of me to help. But that person wasn't available anymore. Meanwhile, Ethan's tone shifted. He started sending messages to IT, flagged as urgent, one after the other. Requests, complaints, demands. Brian ignored them. That had been the agreement. We weren't taking him down. We were just refusing to carry him anymore. The platform continued to twist and creak under misuse. Lucy kept escalating minor bugs, report exports failing, filters malfunctioning, and user sessions logging out without warning. None of the issues were system-breaking, but none of them were being resolved either. And I remained silent. I didn't react to meetings. I didn't step in to help. I didn't even acknowledge when Ethan misquoted part of my logic in a team presentation. I simply watched. The platform, stripped of the care and calibration it once had, was now telling its own story. Then, Tara resigned. No announcement. No all-staff farewell message. Just a quiet submission to HR and an empty desk by the afternoon. I found out from Nora. "Another one gone," she typed into our private chat. She said, "Trying to work here felt like holding sand with open fingers." That same day, 2 team leads flipped their Slack statuses to offline indefinitely. Then Nora messaged again, this time with urgency. "None of my approval requests are going through. Every single form is stuck. Finance, legal, procurement, frozen." She sent a screenshot. Her dashboard looked like a battlefield of red flags. The system was routing through Ethan's credentials for approval, but those permissions weren't working. Everything stopped. By Thursday, a quiet division formed across departments. Not a rebellion, just a decision. People weren't going to fix anything under Ethan's watch, so they stopped submitting through him. Instead, unofficial protocols popped up. Don't use that folder. Use the mirrored sheet from Q2. Route to Jared's instance instead. Ethan didn't notice at first. Then he noticed too much. His emails became longer, harsher. Why wasn't this flagged sooner? Who touched this config? Why is no one responding? The tone had shifted from smug to panicked. He tried calling emergency meetings. He summoned people to back-to-back syncs. No one stayed on the call for more than 10 minutes. Lucy's replies came in slower.
Vague.
She stopped using real-time emojis. Just simple, noted, or checking. Then came the moment. Loginex had a demo scheduled, one Ethan insisted on leading. Halfway through, he tried loading the live dashboard. It hung. Spinning wheel. Then an error message. Connection failed. Contact system administrator. 10 minutes later, Jared messaged me. He looked like he was about to throw his laptop through the screen, he said, barely masking the satisfaction in his tone. I gave him 10 seconds. Then I opened the archived instance you built. January build. Ran smooth as glass. And I asked. I told them we'd revert to the stable version until we could troubleshoot Ethan's update. No one pushed back. I thanked him calmly, but inside, something shifted. Not vengeance. Relief. The system I built, quietly, honestly, obsessively, had outlasted the noise. Ethan wasn't being taken down by force. He was being left behind by logic. His failure wasn't personal. It was structural. So he did what most insecure leaders do. He got louder. Ethan began arriving early again. Loud greetings in the hallway. Press shirts. Handshakes with visiting execs. He sent a company-wide email titled, Reclaiming Excellence. It was full of empty buzzwords, synergy, recalibration, optimization cadence. It looked impressive, if you didn't know any better. But many of us did.
And we weren't impressed.
But everyone knew better now. The flash was gone from Ethan's charm. The tension in his smile was showing. His updates, once filled with buzzwords and swagger, were now just noise. Ignored noise. He followed up his Reclaiming Excellence memo with a string of PowerPoint files packed with diagrams, alignment maps, and a long-winded vision document full of recycled content. None of it landed. People opened the decks, glanced at them, and quietly closed the files. No comments. No responses. The silence had become a choice. Not one of politeness or passivity, but of quiet defiance. Then came the leadership meeting. Martin himself scheduled it. Not a recurring sync or a casual weekly update, but a full formal sit-down. Everyone noticed the difference. The room had changed. No more shallow nods or surface-level smiles. This time, the atmosphere carried weight. Brian was there, unshakable as ever. Nora from procurement sat with her laptop already open. Adrian from finance looked unusually direct. Priya from ops had a folder tucked under her arm, already flipped open before she took her seat. Ethan walked in late, but still tried to keep the same energy. He greeted everyone like nothing had happened, like he was still in control. He wasn't. Halfway into the meeting, Martin leaned back and asked, "Brian, you had something you wanted to share?" Brian nodded.
Come.
Professional. He shared his screen. "This is a snapshot of the deployed model folder from last quarter," he said. "I wanted to walk through something that's been overlooked." He clicked into the properties of a core logic file. It wasn't a flashy reveal, just a quiet shift in attention as the room leaned forward. On screen, under the metadata panel, it said plainly, "Created by Celia Rowe. Last modified by Ethan Draxler." Silence. No one moved. Ethan looked at the screen for a beat too long, like he was waiting for someone else to speak. Then he leaned forward, his voice more controlled than usual. "I was under the impression we had transitioned fully to a revised architecture," he said. Brian didn't blink. The revised version stripped critical logic. Our team started reverting to the original build over the past 3 weeks. Quietly. Because it worked. Martin's expression barely shifted, but the weight of his stillness settled into the room. "Did any of you raise this?" he asked. Nora answered first. "I noticed missing approval triggers in the new build. When I compared them to Celia's archived versions, the structure was still intact. I stuck with those." Adrian added, "The financial forecast logic being used across departments? It's her framework. The formula paths, the schema, even the segment filters, they're identical to her January build." Priya chimed in next. "My team never adopted the new version. Too unstable. We only trusted the original configuration." Still, no one was accused. No one raised their voice. No one said Ethan lied. They didn't need to. The facts spoke louder than any accusation. The system had spoken and the metadata told the truth. After that meeting, everything changed. Ethan stopped sending updates. His Slack status shifted to Do Not Disturb and never switched back. The urgency in his messages disappeared. Lucy tried to patch the cracks on his behalf, sent follow-up notes, tagged teammates in threads, but she was met with soft resistance and long silences. People weren't fighting. They were refusing. Approval requests under Ethan's authority were no longer processed. Internal forms routed through him expired without ever being reviewed. His recommendations sat untouched in shared folders, unread, ignored, quietly discarded like broken tools. Then came the memo. Internal audit notification. Monday start date. All teams are advised that an internal compliance audit will begin on Monday to evaluate system deployment, access logs, approval pathways, and version attribution across active platforms. Please prepare accordingly and preserve all relevant records. No name was listed, but everyone knew. And I said nothing. I didn't draft a summary. I didn't forward receipts. I didn't whisper explanations into anyone's inbox. I had already done my part. The system, my system, had carried the rest. The following Monday, Ethan's name stopped appearing in calendar invites. His office stayed locked. No email arrived to say he'd left. No farewell message. Just absence. The next day, his profile in Slack read, account deactivated. His photo disappeared from the org chart. His permissions vanished from internal routing systems, like a name quietly erased from a whiteboard. Lucy vanished, too. No one said where she went. Her files were reassigned, her account deleted, her name scrubbed from the company directory like she had never worked there. And I never returned to the office. I watched from a distance. And when the final audit report arrived in my inbox, I read it once. Quietly. The findings were dry and formal. Misalignment of access control protocols. Misuse of approval systems. Incomplete transitions. Attribution discrepancies. But beneath the jargon, the message was clear. The theft had been real. The silence had been justified. The structure had held. I closed the report. Then I logged out of Beach Systems for the last time. There was no parade. No headline. Just 2 acknowledgments. The first came from Martin. A message forwarded securely through an encrypted channel. You were always the structure behind the stability. Thank you. And the second came from Jared. We've reverted to your build permanently. Internally, it's now called the Celia baseline. That one made me smile. Just a little. 1 month later, I registered my firm. No investors. No pitch decks. Just a clear idea. Structure with integrity. I called it Dovetail Analytics, a small team with simple goals. Build clean systems that made sense, that held under pressure, that told the truth in the data. No buzzwords. No hierarchy. No masks. And slowly they came. Adrian was the first to reach out. Then Nora. Then Brian. One by one, not out of loyalty but out of recognition. They had seen what we built before, the clarity, the competence, the calm. And they wanted it again. But this time, on our terms. We didn't rebuild or beach. We built something better. And back at our beach, are the systems still running? Are the forecasts still holding? Those were mine. They didn't carry my name. But they didn't need to. Legacy doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't require banners or announcements. It lives quietly, in the stability that survives the storm, in the version control logs, in the difference between flash and function. It lives in what endures. And, for me, that was enough.